My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore. I'm 66 years old today, but a part of me is still stuck in the summer of 1981. I was just 18 when I married my high school sweetheart, Mark, who was 21 at the time. We lived in a small town called Waverly, nestled deep in the heart of Kentucky, a place where everybody knows everybody, and secrets echo louder than church bells. I was raised in a tight-knit family, the oldest of 4 sisters. But it was my youngest sister, Amanda Lee, 10 years younger than me, who broke me in a way I didn't think was humanly possible. She was just 16, wide-eyed, reckless and wild, and she slept with my husband, in my own bed, while I worked double shifts as a nurse trying to save enough for our baby's nursery. The shock didn't end there. She got pregnant. By him. And the worst part, neither of them had the decency to feel shame. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a story of silence, of small-town shame, of the invisible wounds that linger long after the scars fade. It's a story about how a woman shattered by the 2 people she loved most found the strength to keep going, not for revenge, but for healing. The sky that day was heavy with thunderclouds, the kind that mirror the weight in your chest when your whole world implodes. The cicadas were screaming. The air smelled like sweat and secrets. And I never saw it coming. Have you ever felt your heart leave your chest without warning, like someone ripped it out while you were still smiling? Because that's exactly what happened to me. The day I found out my baby sister, the same one I used to rock to sleep and braid hair for church, was carrying my husband's child. Yes, you heard me right. My sister slept with my husband, in my own bed, and got pregnant by him. The pain isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's in the silence between breaths. It's in the cracked photo frames and the smell of lavender that used to mean home. And worst of all, I kept quiet for decades. I let the truth rot inside me, because in a town like Waverly, shame doesn't just follow you, it defines you. My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore, and I'm here to finally speak what's been burning in my soul since 1981. To those who think betrayal only comes with shouting, let me tell you something. Some betrayals come dressed in soft voices and familiar hugs. But what really happened that summer? What did I see when I opened that bedroom door? And why? After all these years, am I finally telling the world? Before I take you into the darkest chapter of my life, I want to ask you to do something from the heart. Subscribe to this channel, hit the bell so you don't miss any new stories, and if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, stick around. You're not alone now. Let me take you back to that July afternoon, to the thunder in the sky, the silence in the house, and the scream I never got to release. It was July 14th, 1981. The kind of Kentucky summer that made the walls sweat and the floorboards sigh. The sky hung low like a warning, thick with storm clouds that hadn't yet decided whether to cry or just hover. I remember the cicadas. God, they were loud that day, like they were screaming something my heart hadn't caught up to yet. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the local clinic, and all I wanted was to go home, kick off my shoes, and rest my swollen feet in a basin of cold water. I was 6 months pregnant with my first child. Mark hadn't called to check in, which wasn't unusual, but something about the silence that day didn't sit right in my chest. I turned off the engine in the driveway and just sat there. The radio buzzed static from a missed station, and for a moment I thought about turning around, going to Mama's for a glass of sweet tea instead. But something, maybe God, maybe instinct, told me to go inside. The house looked still, too still. Amanda's bike was laid flat on the grass, the front wheels spinning lazily like it had just been dropped. I furrowed my brow. She wasn't supposed to be home. She had a summer camp gig at the community center across town. The screen door creaked, a sound I normally found comfort in. That day, it sounded like a warning. The air inside smelled off. Not dirty, but lived in. Like too many breaths had filled the space and left sweat behind. My hand instinctively touched the curve of my belly as I called out, "Mark." Silence. Amanda. Nothing. The ceiling fan whirred above like it was trying to whisper something I didn't want to hear. I walked past the living room, glancing at the old clock Mama gave us as a wedding gift. 3:15, too early for secrets, I thought. But when I turned the corner into the hallway, I saw something that made my skin go cold. The bedroom door was cracked open. The window beside it, open wide, curtains fluttering like nervous hands. I took 1 step, then 2. My breath caught. My feet didn't want to move, but my body went forward anyway, like it knew something my brain hadn't pieced together yet. What I saw when I pushed that door open will never leave me, not even after all these years. Mark's back was to me, shirtless, sweat-slicked. Amanda's bare legs were draped over the side of the bed. Her long auburn hair spilled over my pillow. They didn't hear me. They were too wrapped up in each other, in sin, in betrayal, in something unholy that tore through every vow I had ever spoken. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I froze. And then I turned and walked back out the front door like I had forgotten my own name. I sat in the car for hours, not moving, not crying, just listening to the cicadas. The same cicadas that had tried to warn me. I didn't go back inside the house that day, not even to grab my purse or the little baby book I kept under my pillow. I drove straight to the edge of town, to the old cemetery where my daddy was buried. I parked under the same oak tree where he used to take us for Sunday picnics. I rolled down the windows and just sat there. The Kentucky heat pressed in on me, mixing with the nausea that curled inside my gut. Not from the pregnancy, from betrayal. From the picture burned into the back of my eyelids. Every time I blinked, I saw her. Amanda, 16, legs tangled in my sheets, laughing like love had no consequences. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't tell a soul. In Waverly, people don't talk about sin unless it belongs to someone else's house. I was the preacher's daughter. Mark was the town's golden boy. Amanda was still in high school. If I had told the truth, the shame would have swallowed my family whole. So I told a lie instead. I told Mama I was feeling off, that the baby was making me sick. I told my coworkers I was taking a week off to rest. I told Mark nothing. I never even looked him in the eye. He came home that night with fast food bags and a fake smile. Figured you'd be too tired to cook, he said, kissing my forehead like nothing had happened. I watched the grease seep into the paper napkins and wondered how much of him she had tasted. Amanda didn't come home that night. Of course not. She stayed with a friend. One of those nameless girls Mama always said was a bad influence. They thought I didn't know. They thought I'd never say a word. And for a long time, I didn't. I started talking to the baby instead. In the stillness of the night, I'd whisper into my growing belly, "You'll never know what Mama had to survive to bring you here." I avoided the bed. I slept on the living room couch for weeks. The cushions were too soft, the springs too loud, but it felt safer than laying on top of their betrayal. Mark noticed, but he never asked. Amanda avoided me, but she never apologized. There was a Sunday, about 3 weeks after I found them, when she walked into the kitchen like nothing had ever happened. She poured herself orange juice, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You look tired, Ellie. Maybe you should nap more." I nearly threw the glass across the room, but I didn't. Because by then, I had already decided something. If I was going to survive this, I had to be quieter than the sin, stronger than the shame, and softer than the fire burning in my chest. And above all else, I had to protect my baby. There's a point where silence stops being strength and starts becoming poison. Mine came 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning. The sky was a soft gray, the kind that made everything feel slower, heavier. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, watching the woman who looked nothing like me. Hollow cheeks, tired eyes, belly round with a baby who didn't ask for any of this. Behind me, Mark shuffled through the kitchen, humming that same Johnny Cash song like he hadn't shattered our vows in my own damn bed. The lies were getting harder to swallow. People asked if I was excited for the baby. I nodded. People asked how Amanda was doing. I smiled. People asked if Mark was still being such a good husband. I bit my tongue until it bled. One night, I found her crying on the back porch. Amanda, moonlight caught the edge of her face, and for the briefest moment, I saw the little girl I used to chase through the fields with grass-stained knees and ribbons in her hair. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "I'm scared, Ellie." I didn't answer. I think I'm pregnant." There it was. The words I already knew. The ones I'd been choking on for weeks. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. "You're not going to tell Mama, are you?" she whispered, barely louder than the crickets. And then she did something that broke me all over again. She reached for my hand, like I could still protect her, like I should. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "It just did." I pulled my hand away. "Accidents," I said, my voice like broken glass. "Don't unzip pants, Amanda." She flinched. "I loved him too," I whispered. "You knew that. You saw me marry him. You stood next to me in your little pink dress. You called him brother. And you still, I didn't think you'd find out," she interrupted. And that was the moment I stopped being her sister. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. I gave birth on a rainy morning in late October. The kind of rain that doesn't come with thunder, just endless gray and steady tapping against the hospital windows. I remember the nurse saying, "He's beautiful," as they placed him on my chest. And he was. Eyes like mine. Hair like Mark's. Tiny fingers curled around mine like he knew the world would try to break me, and he'd be the glue. I named him Caleb. It was a name I'd whispered to him every night while the house around me fell apart. Mark was in the delivery room. He cried. I didn't. I watched him cradle Caleb and whisper promises he had no business making. The same hands that held our baby had once held Amanda. The same mouth that kissed my forehead had kissed her neck. And all I could think was, how do you hold something so pure with hands so dirty? Mama came to visit that afternoon, smiling like the world was still whole. A grandbaby, she beamed, rocking Caleb gently. Oh, honey, this is the start of something beautiful. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and say, no, Mama, it's the end of something sacred. The end of everything I thought was safe. But I smiled instead. Because that's what women in Waverly do. We smile through blood. Amanda didn't visit, not at the hospital, not once. I later found out she'd told Mama she had a bad cold. But I knew better. She was pregnant too, and she was hiding. When I came home with Caleb, the house felt like a graveyard. The nursery was perfect, like a set from a play. Painted walls, rocking chair, wooden blocks with letters that now felt like lies. Mark tried to be gentle. Amanda disappeared behind closed doors, and I became two women. The mother who doted, and the wife who disappeared. Late at night, when Caleb cried, I would rock him and whisper stories, not fairy tales. But truths I knew I'd one day have to tell him. One day, baby, I murmured once, tears dripping onto his blanket. You'll ask about your daddy. And I don't know what I'll say. But I promised myself something that night. No matter what happened, no matter how ugly the truth, Caleb would grow up knowing his mother never ran away. She stayed. She survived. She told the truth, even if it nearly killed her. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite time of year. It meant family gathered close, laughter bubbling in the kitchen, and the smell of cinnamon and roasted pecans hugging every corner of the house. But that year, everything felt like a performance. Like we were all actors in a play where no one knew their lines anymore. I spent the morning basting a turkey I didn't want to eat, folding napkins like they were sacred scrolls, and avoiding the eyes of the man I used to love. Mark tried to joke, tried to help, but his touch on my shoulder made my skin crawl. By noon, the house was full. Caleb was bundled in his cradle, cooing softly, unaware that the world around him was rotten at the core. Mama was busy humming a hymn while she whipped potatoes. And I stayed quiet, afraid my voice might shatter the windows if I dared speak too much truth. Then the front door opened. And there she was, Amanda. She walked in with that same careless sway in her step. But now her body had changed. She wore a cream-colored dress cinched at the waist, or where her waist used to be. Her stomach rounded beneath the fabric. Small, but undeniable. My hands went cold. Time stilled. Every sound in the room faded into silence, except the pounding of my own heartbeat. Mama noticed it next. She squinted, tilted her head. Are you, Amanda, honey? Is there something you want to tell us? Amanda smiled, softly, like a child admitting to a prank. I'm for months. That was when the walls started to tilt. For months. Do the math. It lined up perfectly with that day. The day I came home early. The day the window was open and the bedsheets told on them. Mark dropped his fork. Mama gasped. Aunt Jo crossed herself like the devil had just walked in. And I gripped the edge of the table so hard I thought the wood might splinter. Who's the father? Mama asked, eyes wide with a hope I couldn't bear to watch. Do we know him? Amanda looked straight at me, not around me, not through me, at me. And her smile didn't waver. I'm not ready to share that yet, she said gently, placing a hand on her belly like she was cradling a secret. No one breathed. Everyone assumed she was just scared. But I knew better. She wasn't protecting a secret. She was flaunting a victory. After dinner, while the others scrubbed dishes and scraped pie crusts into the trash, I walked out onto the porch. The air was thick. The sky hung low, threatening rain. Mark followed me out, hands in his pockets like a boy caught stealing. She shouldn't have shown up like that, he muttered. I didn't turn to look at him. She showed up because she knew I wouldn't speak, I replied. And I was right. I hadn't burned the house down. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't told a soul. And because of that, she felt safe. That night, while rocking Caleb to sleep, I listened through the thin walls as Amanda hummed a lullaby in her room. The same one I used to sing to her when she had nightmares. Now she sang it to her unborn child, the one she made with my husband. And for the first time since all of it began, I felt something deeper than pain. I felt done. Done pretending. Done protecting them. Done swallowing the fire in my chest. Because silence had turned me into a ghost in my own home. And ghosts eventually learned to haunt. The next morning, the house smelled like leftovers and lies. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes, no matter how many times you wash them. Mark was in the kitchen making coffee like it was any other day. Amanda had already left, probably back to wherever she was hiding that swollen belly and twisted conscience. Caleb was on the rug, kicking his tiny legs, gurgling in his own little world. And me. I stood by the sink, staring out the window, holding a mug I couldn't bring myself to drink from. Something inside me had shifted. Not like a storm. More like a slow, steady crack across a frozen lake. Quiet, but irreversible. I started packing that day. Not in the way people think. Not with boxers or taped-up memories. No, I packed piece by piece, moment by moment. I stopped leaving my toothbrush in the bathroom. I began hiding my journal in the diaper bag. I started setting aside money from the grocery envelope Mama gave me each week. I didn't know where I'd go. I just knew I had to go. There was no dramatic moment. No final scream or suitcase thrown down the stairs. Only quiet steps. Thoughtful ones. The kind women take when they've been holding back too long and are finally choosing themselves. At dinner, I stopped looking Mark in the eye. When he touched my back, I didn't flinch anymore. I just felt nothing. Amanda came by a few days later, pretending to check on Caleb. She brought a tiny pair of baby socks, blue, as if that wasn't a slap in the face. Thought he might need these, she said, avoiding my gaze. I took the socks and said nothing. She looked around the house like it still belonged to her, like we were all frozen in the moment. She tore the whole place apart and never paid for it. Then, just as she was walking out the door, she turned and whispered, "You don't have to stay, Ellie. No one's asking you to." I didn't respond, but her words stuck to me like smoke. She wasn't offering kindness. She was marking her territory. The next morning, I drove to the post office and opened a box under a name I hadn't used since college, my maiden name, Eleanor Grace Porter. I needed something that was mine again. Just mine. I didn't know it yet, but that small metal box would become the first brick in my escape. At night, while Caleb slept on my chest, I would whisper, "Our plan." "Not now, baby," I'd say, "but soon. Mama's going to get us out. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest." It didn't matter if I had no one waiting for me. I was learning that sometimes the greatest rescue comes when you decide to be your own savior. It came on a Thursday. The sky was clear, the wind was sharp, and Caleb had just fallen asleep in my arms after a restless night of teething. I hadn't planned to stop by the post office. I almost didn't, but something nudged me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was God. I parked the car, left the engine running, and walked inside like I didn't belong there. My name wasn't Eleanor Whitmore at that little metal box. It was Porter, again. A name that hadn't touched my lips in years. A name that still tasted like freedom. There was only one envelope inside. No return address. Just handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. I opened it in the car with trembling fingers. "Ellie, I don't know if this will ever reach you. Mama said you were back in Waverly. I wanted to check in. I heard things. Whispers about Amanda. About Mark. I don't want to believe them. But if they're true, and you're hurting, I'm still here. Still in Nashville. Still your friend. If you need anything at all, call me. Love, June." June Lockhart, my best friend from school. The one who used to braid my hair before dances. The one who used to say, "You were made for bigger things, Ellie. Don't let this town eat you alive." We hadn't spoken since she left for college. Life pulled us apart. Her to the city, me to marriage, then motherhood, then misery. But she was still there. Still watching. Still reaching for me. Tears slid down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. It had been months since anyone asked if I was okay, without conditions, without judgment, without pretending not to know. I clutched the letter to my chest like it was a lifeline. And maybe it was. That night, after Caleb fell asleep, I pulled out the old rotary phone in the hallway and dialed the number she had scribbled on the bottom of the letter. My hands shook. I almost hung up before the first ring, but then her voice came through. "Hello?" It sounded older, deeper, but it was her. I couldn't speak. "Ellie," she said again, softer this time. That was all it took. I broke. The tears came like a flood. Ugly, gasping sobs that had waited months to come out. She didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. She just let me cry. When I finally managed to say something, it was this: "I don't know who I am anymore." And June, sweet June, replied without hesitation, "You're still you. You just forgot for a little while." For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel alone. I felt seen. And sometimes, when you're surrounded by ghosts and betrayal, being seen is the first step back to being real again. The call with June lit a fire in me I hadn't felt since before the wedding, since before I ever said I do to the man who would destroy me piece by piece with soft hands and sharp betrayal. After we hung up, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, a cup of black coffee untouched beside me, Caleb's baby monitor whispering static in the background, and for the first time since everything crumbled, I felt a plan forming. Not just a fantasy, not just a whisper in the back of my head, a real, breathing possibility. June had offered her guest room, said she'd drive down herself, pick me up, and Caleb. No questions asked. All I had to do was say when. And God help me, I was ready. I spent the next day in a daze. I moved like a ghost, folding Caleb's clothes, cleaning out drawers, gathering birth certificates, and hiding cash in his diaper bag. I even packed a small suitcase and left it in the trunk of my car. Mark didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. Amanda stopped by that evening. Her belly, more obvious now. She looked tired. Or maybe it was guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. She didn't stay long, just enough to drop off a pie, she said Mama insisted she bring. Before she left, she turned at the door. You still hate me, don't you? I didn't answer. You think you're better than me, she continued, voice low. But you're not. You just hide your sins better. I wanted to laugh. Sin. She thought surviving was sin. I don't hate you, I finally said. But one day, your child will ask where their father is. And I wonder what story you'll tell. She didn't reply. Just blinked at me, maybe shocked, maybe ashamed, then turned and left. I closed the door, locked it, and turned off every light. That was the night I almost left. I stood by the crib, staring down at Caleb's sleeping face. The car keys were in my hand. The bag was packed, the tank was full. But I didn't go. Because just as I reached for the front door, he started crying. Not a soft, sleepy cry, the kind that passes with a lullaby. It was a scream, from the belly, like he knew something was about to change. I scooped him up, held him close. His tiny fingers grabbed a lock of my hair and didn't let go. And that's when I knew it wasn't the right night. Not yet. Not because I was scared of leaving, but because I was still afraid I'd come back. It happened on a Sunday. We were all at Mama's house like we always were after church. The table groaned under the weight of her famous pot roast and buttermilk biscuits. The cousins ran barefoot through the grass. Caleb slept in my arms, warm and soft against my chest, his tiny breath the only thing keeping me anchored. Mark sat across from me, laughing too loudly, like a man trying to outshout guilt. Amanda was quiet, too quiet. Her belly had grown. She didn't try to hide it anymore. Mama hovered around her like she was something sacred. You'll be a wonderful mother, she kept saying. Just like your sister. And I wanted to scream, like me. The one you never ask how she's doing? The one holding the child that should have been born into love, not betrayal? After dessert, the women gathered in the parlor. Amanda was sitting on the floral couch, one hand resting over her stomach. When Aunt Jo finally asked the question that had been floating above us for months, like a storm cloud refusing to break, "Well, darling," she said, "don't leave us hanging. Who's the lucky man?" The room stilled. Mama looked hopeful, curious, naive, and Amanda smiled that same smile that always meant trouble was coming, dressed in lace. "He's not from around here," she said. "Just someone I met last spring. It wasn't serious. He's gone now. Gone. Not from around here. A ghost with perfect timing." The lie sliced through the room like a cold wind. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. Because when you know the truth, when you've lived it, lies don't sound soft anymore. They clang. They echo. They hurt. Mama sighed with relief. "Well, at least you're not alone. We're here. This family will raise that baby in love." And that was it. No more questions. No one pressed. No one noticed how Mark's hand trembled when he poured his sweet tea. No one saw how I gripped Caleb just a little tighter. No one heard how my silence cracked wide open inside me. Not with a scream, but with something deeper. A vow. If they wouldn't see the truth, I'd stop hiding from it too. That night, when we got back home, I placed Caleb in his crib, closed the door gently, and sat down at the kitchen table. Mark walked in behind me. He didn't say a word. I waited. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "You're going to tell them, aren't you?" I looked up. And for the first time since that day, the day I found them, I smiled. "No, Mark," I said, calm as still water. "You are." I gave him until Sunday. No threats, no screaming. Just a quiet deadline delivered over coffee and cold silence. "You either tell the truth," I said, "or I will. And this time, I won't whisper." Mark didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at the wall like it might offer him an escape. But there was no way out anymore. Not for him. Not for Amanda. And not for the lies they tried to bury beneath casserole dishes and baby showers. Sunday came fast. We were at Mama's again, the usual crowd. Amanda wore a yellow maternity dress that clung too tightly to the truth. She was glowing. Not from joy, from secrecy. Mark looked like a man walking toward a firing squad. I watched him all afternoon. Hands shaking. Jaw clenched. Guilt dripping off him like sweat. After dinner, as folks settled in with pie and coffee, I stood up. My heart was racing, but my voice was steady. I think it's time Mark said something. I said. The room paused. Mama furrowed her brow. Amanda looked up, confused. Mark froze. I don't know what you mean, he mumbled, already shrinking. I turned to him. Tell them, Mark, about Amanda, about the baby. Gasp. The kind that echo. Amanda stood, face pale. Ellie, don't. I raised a hand. No. No more silence. No more pretending. Mark looked like he might faint. And then, with eyes full of something that wasn't remorse, maybe fear, maybe exhaustion, he opened his mouth. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said. Mama clutched her chest. You, she asked, barely breathing. You're the father. Amanda started to cry. Mark nodded. I made a mistake. And I laughed. Not out of joy, but from the absurdity of the moment. A mistake, I repeated. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was betrayal with intention. Over and over, under my roof, in my bed. The room was silent. Amanda ran from the room, sobbing. Mama followed, tears on her face, like she'd been slapped. Mark tried to speak again, but I turned and walked away. There was nothing left to hear. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch swing with Caleb in my arms, listening to the crickets and the rustle of the wind through the trees. And I realized something. The worst had already happened and I was still standing. Not whole, not healed, but no longer hiding. And that was a beginning. 2 weeks after the confession, I left. Not in the dead of night. Not with police sirens or screaming matches echoing behind me. I didn't want a dramatic exit. I didn't need one. Drama was their language. Mine had become something quieter, stronger. I waited until Caleb's morning nap. I dressed him in a clean onesie, the one with the tiny blue stars Mama had stitched before the baby shower. I packed the last of our things into the car. Nothing fancy, just diapers, bottles, his favorite blanket, and a few changes of clothes for me. I didn't take the photo albums, didn't take the rings, didn't take the wedding dress I once thought I'd pass down to a daughter. I left them the house, the rooms, the lies. Amanda didn't try to stop me. Mark didn't even come home the night before. I think, in their own way, they both knew they'd already lost me. June was waiting at the gas station just off the highway. Her old pickup still smelled like mint gum and leather. When she saw me, she didn't speak, just walked over, took Caleb from my arms, and held him like he was hers. You ready? She asked. I nodded. But the truth is, I wasn't. How could I be? You don't get ready to walk away from the life you built, even if it was built on betrayal. You just decide it's time. And then you go. We drove in silence for the first 30 miles. Caleb slept in his car seat. June had one hand on the wheel, the other resting on her knee. The road stretched out before us, like possibility, like something I could finally call my own. When we crossed the state line into Tennessee, I rolled down the window, let the wind hit my face. Let it carry away the woman I used to be. At a rest stop, while June changed Caleb's diaper, I stood by the vending machines and stared at my reflection in the glass. Hair tied back, eyes tired, but focused. Cheeks flushed from more than just heat. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't see a broken woman. I saw someone rebuilding. Someone brave enough to leave. Not just a man, not just a house, but the version of herself that believed she didn't deserve better. Nashville wasn't just a city. It was air. After years of choking on secrets and swallowed screams, it felt like breathing for the first time again. June lived in a quiet neighborhood tucked behind an old Baptist church. Her house was modest, white porch, peeling paint, wind chimes that played hymns when the breeze was right. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. That first morning, I woke up to birds outside the window and Caleb cooing beside me. No Mark, no Amanda, no smell of betrayal steeped in the walls, just us. I made coffee in June's tiny kitchen. She left a note. Go slow. You don't owe anyone speed. I read it 3 times. Let the truth of it sink in. I didn't have to rush into healing. Didn't have to perform strength. I could be soft, quiet, free. The first few days, I walked a lot. Caleb in the stroller. The sidewalks were lined with oak trees and old couples watering their gardens. No one knew me here. No one looked at me like I was her, the woman whose sister carried her husband's child. And for the first time, I felt light. I remember the moment I laughed again. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. I was in the park. Caleb had just learned to clap, and he clapped every time he saw a dog pass by. One tiny beagle walked past and barked so sharply that Caleb gasped, and then burst into laughter so loud and sudden that I couldn't help it. I laughed too, from the belly, the kind of laugh that shakes dust off your bones. And just like that, something in me broke open, but in a good way. Not from pain, from release. Later that night, June and I sat on the porch, drinking iced tea and watching the stars blink into place. "You're different already," she said. "I don't feel different," I answered. She smiled. "That's because healing is quiet. You won't notice until one day you look back and realize the woman you used to be wouldn't recognize the woman you are." I sipped my tea. "I don't want to forget what they did, what I felt." "You don't have to," she said. "But you also don't have to carry it every step." And that stuck with me, because I'd been carrying them, their shame, their choices, for too long. But now, in this new place, under this open sky, I was learning to carry something else. Myself. Caleb was growing fast. Too fast. One morning, I blinked, and his hands weren't so small anymore. He started crawling across June's hardwood floors, chasing dust particles like they were fireflies. His laugh filled every corner of the house. It was joy, pure, unfiltered joy, and yet, every time I looked at him, a question crept in like a shadow behind the sun. What will I tell him one day? The truth sat inside me like a rock, heavy, unmovable. I tried to picture him at 6, at 10, at 15, sitting across from me, brows furrowed, asking, "Where's my dad? Why don't we see Aunt Amanda anymore? Why do you never talk about Kentucky?" And what would I say? How do you explain to a child that he was born out of love, but surrounded by betrayal? That his father chose silence over decency? That his aunt's blood shattered the foundation of an entire family? I carried that question like a secret, buried it under bedtime stories and soft lullabies. But one night, while Caleb slept with his hand wrapped around my finger, I whispered it out loud. "When you ask, baby, I'll tell you the truth. Not out of bitterness, not to make him hate them, but because I want him to grow up knowing that silence is not love, that protecting someone from pain is not the same as lying, that survival doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without letting it define you." June and I talked about it on a walk one afternoon. "You'll know when it's time," she said. "And when that day comes, he'll be ready, because you've been raising him with truth in your bones." I nodded, even though part of me still trembled. The world doesn't always reward honesty. I learned that the hard way. But Caleb deserved a mother who didn't flinch at her own story. So I wrote it all down. Every detail, every wound, every choice. In a leather-bound journal I kept in the back of my closet. It started like this. "Dear Caleb, I want you to know that you were wanted, that you were loved, that your life is not defined by the choices other people made, but by the strength your mother found to walk away. Here's what really happened. I don't know when I'll give it to him. Maybe when he's 16. Maybe never. But it's there, waiting. Because one day, my son will have questions, and I'll be ready, not with rage or shame, but with the truth." It had been almost 2 years since I left Waverly. 2 long, quiet, healing years. Caleb was now walking, well, running, really, through the garden June had planted in the backyard. He loved the smell of mint, the buzz of bees, the soft hum of his mama's laughter. I had carved out a new life. Small, simple, but mine. I worked part-time at the local library. I joined a book club. I even learned to drive on the highway again without shaking. I had stopped looking over my shoulder, until one afternoon, they came. I was sweeping the porch when I saw a familiar car pull up. It was Mama's, and Amanda was with her. They didn't call, they didn't write, they just showed up. Caleb was napping. June wasn't home. So it was just me and the ghosts. I stood at the top of the porch steps, arms crossed, the broom still in my hand like a shield. "Eleanor," Mama said first, voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't answer. I looked at Amanda. She looked older, not in years, but in weight. Her eyes were darker, her smile gone, and, in her arms, a baby, a little girl. I swallowed hard. "She wanted to meet her cousin," Amanda said quietly. The words hit harder than I expected. Cousin, not half-brother, not nephew, cousin. A rewrite of the truth, a softer lie. Mama stepped forward. "I miss you, baby. I made mistakes. I didn't see what I should have seen. I didn't protect you. And for that, I'm sorry." Amanda didn't speak. Her eyes welled with tears, but I didn't know if they were real, or just a tired woman finally facing the consequences of silence. I looked at the baby in her arms. She was beautiful, soft brown curls, chubby cheeks, big blue eyes, and my chest ached. But I didn't invite them in. "I'm glad you came," I said. "I needed to see that you were still human, that I was right to walk away." Amanda's lips parted, maybe to speak, maybe to beg, but I raised a hand. "You didn't lose a sister," I said. "You threw her away." Mama wiped her face. "I'll be in town for a few days," she whispered. "If you change your mind." They turned and walked back to the car. No hugs, no second chances, just silence. I went inside, sat on the couch, and cried. Not because I regretted leaving, not because I wanted them back, but because even when you're right to walk away, it still hurts to know you had to. That night, I rocked Caleb to sleep and whispered the same words I had been saying since the day he was born. We start over as many times as we need to, as long as we never lie to ourselves again. I never saw Amanda again after that afternoon. Mama sent a few letters in the months that followed, mostly updates. A photo of the baby, an apology scribbled in shaky handwriting. I read them. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because some things don't need revisiting. Some stories are finished, even when the people in them still breathe. Caleb grew strong, curious, full of questions, but never once did he ask about his father. Maybe because he could sense what my silence had been holding all this time. Or maybe because he never felt the absence, only the presence of something deeper. Love that stayed. He's 7 now. Last week, he brought home a drawing from school. It was me and him, holding hands under a tree. A big heart above our heads. He'd written, "Mommy is my hero," in crooked letters that made me cry on the kitchen floor after he went to bed. Because for so long, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt broken, ashamed, forgotten. But I kept going, kept loving, kept telling myself, just one more day. And somewhere along the way, one more day turned into healing, into freedom, into me. I don't live in fear anymore. I don't avoid mirrors. I don't whisper the truth. I speak it loud, clear, and without apology. Because my name is Eleanor Grace Porter. I was betrayed by my husband. I was destroyed by my sister. And I survived. Not with revenge, not with violence, but with honesty, with grit, with the kind of grace that only comes when you've walked through hell and refused to pitch a tent. If you made it this far, thank you. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of a pain you've carried in silence, know this: you are not alone. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to protect you? I'll read every story, with all the care in the world. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications, so you don't miss the next real, raw, and emotional story from another brave woman. And if this story hit your heart, I promise you'll connect with the next one that's popping up on your screen right now. Because here, we speak the truth, even